So welcome everyone. I'm going to call this meeting of the Select Board to order and pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023 and amended on March 28th on 2025. Governor Moore Healy signed into law an act extending pandemic-related authorizations related to public meetings. And those were specifically to allow remote meeting options for public bodies through June 30th of 2027. So tonight's meeting of the Select Board will be conducted by a remote participation by the board, and I'm going to grant permission to Westwood Media Center to record the meeting. And to anyone else who wishes to record, I just ask that you identify yourself up front. I do see one hand up in the attendees list, but I am aware as to why that hand is up. So with that, I'm going to jump right into the chair's update. And I'm going to begin with Dedham Westwood Water District has a new billing system, and everybody should have received a notice. Starting at the end of October, Dedham Westwood Water will begin a conversion to this new water billing software. Once the conversion is completed, which is probably end of this week, residents will experience several new changes, including new account numbers, a new online payment portal, a payment provider, and other additional payment options, and an improved bill layout. So if you have any questions about that or looking for more information, you can visit the Dedham Westwood Water District's website at www.dwwd.org. And next, I'm gonna just remind everyone that this Tuesday, November 11th at 11 a.m., we will be holding our Veterans Day observation and ceremonies in Veterans Park at 11 a.m. In the event that we have inclement weather, the ceremony will be moved to the Council on Aging located at 60 Manhattan Street. If that location change is necessary, town will send out an alert Westwood notification prior to the event and post updated information on the town website. Finally, with respect to the town administrator search, we are in the process of doing sort of final background checks on everybody. I expect we will be holding a meeting sometime next week to announce the candidates, the finalists, the three that we will be conducting interviews with, and very likely we'll be holding our interviews late next week as well. So once we have sort of firmed up the timing on that, you will see announcements on, our town website as far as when those meetings will be held. So stay tuned on that, but we are getting very close to the finalists and then ultimately to a decision. I think that's all we've got in the way of a chair's update. Molly, do you have some things that you'd like to do with respect to the TA update?
I do. I have two items this evening. So some good financial news. S&P Global Ratings has reaffirmed the town of Westwood's AAA bond rating, which is the highest possible rating a municipality can receive. This reaffirmation reflects the town's strong financial position, prudent management practices, and long-term commitment to fiscal discipline. In its report, S&P highlighted Westwood's realistic budgeting assumptions, sound financial performance, and strong management culture. Maintaining this rating allows the town to borrow the most favorable interest rates, reducing costs for our capital projects, and directly benefits the taxpayers. And it's a great reflection of the town's financial strength and the hard work of our finance team across the organization. So that's the first update. And then the second quick update I have is in regards to the situation with SNAP benefits. So as residents may have heard, federal funding for SNAP has been delayed due to the ongoing government shutdown. The State Department of Transitional Assistance is the lead agency for communication, and we're following that guidance very closely. Our Human Services Department is coordinating with the food pantry, the Westwood Food Pantry, and other community partners to make sure we're providing the right support to affected residents and identifying any gaps that we might have. So for residents who want to help, the best way to do that is by supporting the Westwood Food Pantry, and residents can visit their website at westwoodfoodpantry.org for more information.
Very good. Thank you, Molly. We are now going to move to the public and press portion of the meeting. During this, each resident wishing to be heard can raise their hand, or they can, if they'd like to speak live, or you can write your comments into the Zoom Q&A function. We ask that you identify yourself by stating your full name and address. And each speaker or commentary will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. We will not be responding to questions at this time, but we'll be listening to all comments and concerns shared by the public. And so with that, I see a couple of hands already raised and one in the Q&A, but I think the Q&A is related to one of the hands raised. So I will acknowledge Dan Bailey and Duncan McFarland, who are apparently together. So if Dan, you could unmute yourself, and Laura, if you could allow, I see that you have already done so, for Dan to be able to talk.
Should I go ahead?
You can.
Okay.
Are we not going to hit audio? Just oh, I mean video.
We typically just do this as audio. If you'd like to be on video, you can be on video.
I don't see
Welcome
why.
as well.
Well, that's going to take some time, Dan, right?
No, it should just usually. Well, we'll start. We'll start this way. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dan Bailey representing Duncan McFarland. Clapper Tree Street. And I just wanted to introduce Mr. McFarland and myself. You know me. I'm a land use lawyer at Pierce Atwood in Boston, and Duncan is here with me. So Duncan, why don't you slide over?
Okay. So I'm Duncan McFarland, 299 Clapper Tree Street, and Dan Bailey is here representing me as my attorney. First of all, my question is, did the select board receive my letter of October 10 relative to this issue? And they said they're not going to provide any response to that. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay, so the main points I raised in my letter is, why would the town engage in this litigation in terms of just helping an abutter to town-owned land? Secondly, the abutter has in the past gotten rid of agricultural land, taking advantage of a 61A a loophole to build his house on what was previously agricultural land. So why does he want more now? And the third thing is, I have offered to buy this town land, which is restricted, for $475,000, which is, I think, above market, to get this issue behind us. And I'm concerned that the town would turn that down and incur this litigation expense on behalf of an abutter.
Thank you very much, Mr. McFarland.
You want to add anything to Dan?
No, I'm all set. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you very much, both. Next, I'd like to recognize Peter Schuler. Laura, if you could please permit Mr. Schuler to speak. And Mr. Schuler, you can remain as audio, or if you'd like to come in as video, you can do that as well. What's your preference?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Audio is fine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and all members of the Select Board. My name is Peter Schuler, and I live at 779 Gay Street. I believe you all know that I'm a committed supporter of the Select Board and respect the hard work and dedication you have shown to do what is best for the residents of Westwood. However, I'm really troubled by your lawsuit against the Westwood Land Trust because it seeks to undermine the authority that organization has to obtain and enforce conservation restrictions on land acquired through private donations. The town of Westwood's open space and recreation plan, adopted in 2000, was the reason the land trust was formed, to act on behalf of the residents to obtain and protect environmentally sensitive and important open space through conservation measures. Your actions suggest you have forgotten that important resident mandate. The three most important reasons for my objection to this lawsuit are: number one, you are acting on behalf of a single business owner to help boost their bottom line profit margin. How in the world do you feel this is the business of the Select Board? This will set a precedent that any other business owner may use to expect similar preferential action by the Select Board on their behalf. Number 2, the Select Board should have politely reminded Mr. Bean that the Bean family converted almost 4 acres of their farmland on Clappertree Street to housing for their family, using threats against the town to sell the remaining farmland to developers unless they get access to parts of the Clapboard Tree Meadow should be rejected unless you want all other large landowners to come forward with quid pro quo requests based on this dangerous precedent. Number 3, the long history of land donation for conservation purposes by the McFarland family to this town should never be forgotten. They have expressly stated that the intent of their donation of the land in question was to preserve the meadow and forest in its natural state. Your actions to go against those clear objectives, and while potentially legal, show exceptionally poor judgment and disrespect for conservation efforts in this town. I have yet to hear publicly what your reason is for pursuing this lawsuit. I believe you owe that clear explanation to the residents of this town without infringing your executive privilege. I respectfully request that you drop this wasteful and unnecessary lawsuit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schuler, and compliments to you because you were able to do that in 3 minutes on the dot. So, appreciate your commentary. I see another hand up. I'm just going to quickly check to see if there's anything in the Q&A. I don't see anything other than the one that we answered. So I would now like to recognize Chuck Bean, who has his hand up. Laura, if you could allow Mr. Bean to speak. Chuck, can you hear us? You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
All right, fantastic. This is Chuck Bean at 700 Clapboard Tree Street in Westwood. And thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you folks today. There's 2 sides to every story, and I want to set the record straight. A little bit of history with this property. Back in the late 90s, over 25 years ago, the previous owner, Robert Prout, was in the process of selling this property called Prout Farm to a developer who was trying to build 68 condominiums that would have wrapped around our family's farm. My father was totally up in arms over the prospect of this project, and as a result, he started and formed the Clapper Tree Preservation Society to try to conserve the land. He personally knocked on every door up and down Clapboard Tree, looking to raise funds and garner support against the project. Through this process, he connected with Duncan and Ellen McFarland, who answered the call. They ultimately bought the land out from under the developer, donated the development rights, got a large tax deduction, put the land in conservation, and gifted the land to the town of Westwood. This was also about the time of the inception of the Westwood Land Trust. But it was my father who introduced the McFarlands to the idea of conserving this land to begin with, and his only request was to add specific language into that conservation restriction, allowing agricultural uses on the open field. He was hopeful that someday a future member of the Bean family might want to expand the farm. And at the time of drafting and editing the CR, it was extremely clear to all parties what the intent was and why the agricultural language was in there to begin with. So you have to ask, why would Duncan McFarland and all the select board members sign the document which they created if it was not their intent to allow agriculture? You know, then a few years later, Duncan McFarland approached me through his attorney requesting to buy some of our land across the street, adjacent to another property they owned at 682 Clapboard Tree at the time. They needed 37 more feet of frontage and some of our land down by the pond so they could develop a cul-de-sac with house lots to enrich the value before putting this land into conservation. And Duncan, the only reason why we did a deal with you and sold you the land for a nominal sum was to help you, because you helped us by putting my father's agricultural use in the CR of the property across the street. So bottom line, we're talking about farming only 8 acres of a field within a 23-acre conserved parcel at 655 Clapboard Tree. These 8 acres represent only 3.5% of the total 220 acres in Westwood, with CRs controlled by the land trust. 3.5%, that tiny percent will help sustain and keep the last working farm in Westwood. So Duncan, I plead with you, and you can end this litigation and the divisiveness in town in a heartbeat. The Bean family does not want nor causes litigation, and the town doesn't want it either. You created and control the land trust. You have the power to end this today. We're asking you to please honor the commitments you made years ago and allow my son the opportunity to use this land for agriculture as it was always intended, and help keep the bean farm in Westwood where it's been for over 70 years.
Mr. Bean, I'm sorry, that's the 3-minute time limit, and I would ask that you keep your comments directed at the select board and not to any of the other folks who've spoken before. But thank you very much for your commentary, and I do not see any additional hands raised. I do not see any additional questions in the Q&A. We'll give it another minute or two in case there are any members of the public that want to say anything further before we move into scheduled action.
Rob, while we're waiting, I just wanted to make a comment relative to the town administrator's report with respect to the AAA bond rating. I just wanted to give a shout out to Stephanie McManus. I see that she's on the call. I don't know if she is in a position to turn her video on, but I just wanted to congratulate her as our finance director and her entire team, which has done such great work in maintaining that AAA bond rating. I'm glad you could join us so that we can collectively congratulate you and your team, Stephanie. Thank you for all of your hard work.
Thank you. I appreciate that. This isn't the best camera angle on this laptop, so I do have a lot. But no, I said the same thing to our team today. It really, all the reports highlight, internal management and processes and controls, and that's really the people within the finance team. So it was a great effort, and just overall shows an appreciation for the town and how prudent we are with finances. So I'm glad we reaffirmed it, and thank you for saying that, Marianne. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I know Joe and I echo those same sentiments in terms of our appreciation for you, the team, and all the hard work that you do on behalf of the community. So thank you, Stephanie. All right. Hearing and seeing no additional hands for public and press, I'm going to move now to scheduled action. We have a 1-day special permit for an event at Hale. I believe Nora is in attendance here. Do we have Nora Loughnane? No, I don't see her.
I
Oh, she-
believe Westwood Web Conferencing raised their hand, and
That's Nora. That's
that
Nora.
is okay. Additionally, there are 2 Leslies in attendance. Leslie, if you don't mind raising your hand, if
Leslie Riding.
perfect. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. She should be joining now as a panelist.
Gotcha. All right.
All right, so if I could start explaining. So this is an event that is being requested for a 1-day license. It's the Southeast Chapter New England Mountain Bike Association's Turkey Afterburner. It's scheduled for Sunday, November 30th from 8:30 to 4. This has come before you a number of times in past years. I believe they've been doing this since 2022, and it has always gone off without a hitch. They're requesting a 1-day malt and wine and malt beverages license. They are proposing food, music, skills clinics, and a cash bar at the event. They've hired Shoveltown Brewery to be the certified alcohol servers, who has submitted tip certification cards and proof of liquor liability insurance. They've also applied for temporary food permits for 2 vendors, and those are in process. The whole application was reviewed by the Alcohol Review Committee, and they recommend unanimously that the board grant the 1-day license here. Oh, and one other thing I'll point out is that the police department reviewed and determined that no police detail was necessary, and none has been used in past years either.
Okay. Thank you for being here, Leslie.
Thank
Colleague?
you.
Anyone with any questions?
I don't have any, Rob.
I don't have questions. We've voted on this event a number of times. I have to say, it always makes me feel quite lazy with all these people doing this Afterburner event, but more power to them.
We certainly invite everyone to swing by and say hello. We'd love for you to see it.
Oh, thank you.
Well, with a last name like Riding, you were built for this event, right? So
That's right.
I would entertain a motion.
I'd be happy to do so, Rob. I'd like to make a motion for the select board to approve a one-day special wine and malt license to Leslie Riding on behalf of Southeast Mass New England Mountain Bike Association. The one-day special wine and malt license is to serve alcohol on Sunday, November 30th, 2025, from 10:30 a.m. until 4 p.m., with the time to set up and remove alcohol from the premises from 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Sunday, November 30th, 2025, pending food permit issuance and final public safety inspections. Also, for the electronic signatures of the select board to be affixed to the Southeast Mass New England Mountain Bike Association one-day special license.
I second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Joe,
Aye.
Marianne,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Leslie, we wish you a great day of good weather, and thank you very much for putting this on.
Thank you again. Appreciate it.
Okay,
Fingers crossed for sunshine.
that's right. All right, I believe we now move to a public hearing for Eversource with respect to a grant of location petition for Conduit. I believe we have Christine Crosby here from Eversource. Is that right? Do we see Christine?
Mr. Chair, Christine had emailed me earlier today and said she was going to call in. I have asked her to unmute.
Okay,
This is Christine. Can you hear me?
we can, Christine. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Before you speak, I just want to, because this is a public hearing, we do need to get a motion to open the public hearing. Can I receive such?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I think we probably need to do this one a little more formally in terms of the motion to open a November 3rd public hearing for Eversource petition for Conduit Porter Street to provide electrical service to 160 Porter Street. So can I get a motion for that?
Couldn't have said it better myself. So moved.
And seconded.
All right, roll call, Joe,
Aye.
Marianne,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. The hearing is open, and Christine, why don't you take us through what needs to be done?
Okay, we're requesting permission for grant of location for approximately 45 feet of conduit at existing DMH 1092. And the purpose of this would be to provide new electric service to a new home that's being built out there at 160 Porter Street.
Okay. And I believe these plans were submitted and filed with the town back on September 24th. Do we have anybody? Nora, are you?
I'm happy to speak to it. The petition has been reviewed by town staff, the Department of Public Works, Public Safety, and the Dedham Westwood Water District, and there were no issues or concerns raised by town staff.
Okay. Any questions from board members with respect to this petition?
My only question is what kind of notice is going to be given to the residents in that area who might be impacted?
I'll check on that, but I don't believe there's going to be any kind of an outage out there. So, but I'll check on that and get back to you.
Okay, I didn't know if there would be any issues on the street for people. There's a full road closure, as I understand it.
Yes, it's a full road closure with police details, and we are aware of the fact that the residents do have to have access to their property at all times, along with public safety as well.
Right. I would just ask, and I'm sure, I imagine this is part of the plan, but residents should get advance notice that this work is going to be done and that the road will be closed, just in case there might be any extenuating circumstances, so they're advised in advance.
Yes, I will make note of that. I'll make sure that that's done.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I believe there's also a timing that's sort of imminent in terms of road openings must be done prior to November 15th. So I would imagine your actual schedule for that work is sometime coming up very quickly, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mary Ann, for the commentary on the noticing to residents and the folks that live on that street. Given that this is a public hearing, I will now look to see, are there any questions from members of the public? Hearing and seeing none, I would entertain a motion with respect to this permit request.
I'm happy to do so, Rob. I just want to second what Mary Ann said. I think the abutters in the area should be notified so that they're not trying to rush out to the airport the last minute, discover the street's closed. So if that can be done, I think Molly is usually what, 300 feet from the site that the abutter notification was.
300 feet of butters notice.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. That being said, I would like to make a motion that the Westwood Select Board certify the foregoing order was adopted, excuse me, after due notice and a public hearing as prescribed by Section 22, Chapter 166 of the General Laws, and any additions thereto or amendments thereof to it after written notice of the time and place of the hearing mailed at least 7 days prior to the date of the hearing by the Select Board to all owners of real estate abutting upon the part of the way or ways upon, along or across which the line is to be constructed under said order, as determined by the last preceding assessment for taxation, and a public hearing was held on the 3rd of November 2025 during the Select Board's regularly scheduled meeting.
And then there's the motion that follows to grant permission to NStar Electric DBA Eversource Energy for a grant of location to install approximately 45 feet of conduit on Porter Street, which is northeasterly approximately 500 feet southeast of Nancy Drive, to provide electric service to 160 Porter Street. Eversource must perform a full restoration with the excavated trench following the proposed work and obtain the necessary permits as required by the Department of Public Works and other town departments. Also, the electronic signatures of the Select Board may be affixed to the Eversource petition. And we have duly posted tonight's public hearing, including notices to the abutters. So can I get a motion on that?
So moved.
And seconded.
Excellent. We have a motion and a second. Joe?
Aye.
Mary Ann?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. May I get a motion to close this public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote. Joe?
Aye.
Mary Ann?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Thank you, Christine, for being here, and good luck with the work.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, moving on now to an FS1 update. We're going to do a few things tonight. We're going to review the short-term and long-term scorecards. Chin Lin is here from our OPM Vertex. We'll be getting to that in a few minutes. And then I'm going to start, though, by just going back to our last meeting on October 20th. Spent a great deal of time thinking about the project and how we might best move forward in getting to a solution that the entire community can get behind. Now, when we met last time, we talked about expanding the working group by 3 at-large residents to work alongside the original working group, which consisted of town staff, members of the Westwood Fire Department leadership, our architects from Doran Whittier, and Vertex, our OPM. And we talked about making that a public body. But I think there's an alternative path that we should think about that could lead to even greater transparency, which we've heard is a desire of the community, as well as the eventual community's consensus that we're looking for. The idea is I want to disband the current working group as it formerly existed and create a 7-member committee of residents to act as an advisory committee to us, the select board. This committee would receive a very clear objective from the 3 of us. The various subject matter experts that used to make up the working group would still advise this new steering committee on all matter of operational, technical, procedural, regulatory, and fiduciary considerations. This FS1 steering committee, as I'm calling it, would meet bi-weekly with input from those subject matter experts as needed to get to 2 most viable options. We'd then have to have some more reasonable cost estimates put together, but those would obviously not be down to sort of design and bid level of detail. And then we would have the committee put forward a recommendation to us, the select board, to call for a special town meeting to approve the funding for design bid funding documents to be drawn up. My vision on that would be the committee would continue to meet as often as necessary, but would likely continue with bi-weekly meetings until the design is close to final. They might adjust their meetings to monthly once it moves through to receiving the other required approvals, such as planning board, conservation, ZBA, etc. And then once the bid requests are published, I think they might move to, having a presence at a final FinCom meeting prior to the project issuing prior to the FinCom issuing the town meeting annual warrant book. So that's kind of the thought process behind it. Adding 3 members to the existing working group would have been a little bit awkward from a voting standpoint if it's a public body trying to advise us. I wanted to be able to expand it so that we could get a broader representation of the perspectives across the community. So before we get into reviewing scorecards, I wanted to float this idea with the 2 of you because I think it's it's obviously a change in direction from what we talked about last time. I know we've each been out, we were gonna put forward some names tonight. I would like to hold off on that because I would want to have us each submit 4 names to get to this expanded group of 7. But I think it takes us out of the mix, right? Some of the criticism we heard was that, oh, the select board just is forcing this upon us. No, we're trying to solve an urgent problem, and we want to get as much of the community on board to help solve this problem as possible. We know that it needs to be solved, and we want something that the community can get behind. So I think it makes a ton of sense to not have us be represented on it at all. Let's get an advisory committee that can help narrow that selection set with the input of the public safety professionals, the engineering and architectural professionals, the zoning professionals, and I just think it makes a lot more sense for us to do it this way because we can get broader input and buy-in, which should lead to greater community consensus. That's my perspective. I know I'm sort of putting this out here as something new, so I want to have a discussion about that. So I open it to either of you for thoughts on that.
I like the idea, Rob, of bringing more people in, and that does actually reflect some of the feedback that I've received since our last meeting. I think we need to approach this with some humility in terms of really, as you just said, getting to a proposal that the community can get behind, and really bringing the community in a very engaged way, bringing in, as you said, people with different perspectives on this, so that we can get to a yes, get to a solution on both the short term and the long term needs. So I do think it is a good idea to broaden that group and to bring in those diverse perspectives, because, and I'm just going to reiterate, and Chief, I see that you've joined us. Thank you. This is our priority. And we need to get this done as quickly as possible and as well as possible, with the involvement of the community. So that's a proposal that I can get behind.
And Joe, real quick before you jump in, now that the chief is here, Chief, I want to reassure you that this is not going to be a fire station designed by committee, right? They're going to get a very clear charge as to what it is we're looking for them to do, which is to be able to get to a project that meets the public safety needs and gets us to something that the community can get behind and support. So I just want to reaffirm that this is not going to be a, Mr. Potato Head, put things here or there to try and build a fire station. It will have all of the input from you and your team as public safety professionals, from Chin as our OPM, and from Doran Whittier as our architectural consultants. Go ahead, Joe. I'm sure you got thoughts.
Yeah, I agree with Mary Ann. Rob, I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. I do have a couple of questions for you. I do have a couple of comments I'd like to make. So the public, and I'm asking Rob because I got information from a couple of different people. I want to reconcile this. So the Public Safety Advisory Council will be from the names that we submit as select board members. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And
Yes.
those meetings will be open to the public, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. And the FS1, I'm going to call it the FS1 working group, or or the internal working group, will be comprised of town employees only. Is that correct?
So we would disband the notion of a working group, right? Because this is if this committee that's going to advise us is a public body, the subject matter experts would come before them to answer questions, to present options, no different than when Stephanie comes before us to provide a budget update and we ask her questions and she goes off and does the work that she's hired to do between, this meeting and our next meeting and answers the questions. So I view the rest of that working group that is largely comprised of town staff, the department, and hired consultants. Really, the only people that were part of that working group that were not members of town staff or, hired consultants were yourself as the select board representative. And I'm proposing we do not have a select board representative on this group. And I believe John Cummings and Nancy Hyde as members of the Permanent Building Commission. So, those two would not be part of a working group. There would be no working group. It would just be the professionals coming and providing their input as subject matter experts. Does that make sense?
It does. Would they be meeting in advance, in advance of going to the PSAC?
I mean, I imagine that Chief might meet with Colin and Anthony and some of the department to, discuss some things. I could see Nora meeting with her planning staff to discuss potential implications, or Mike Perkins or somebody that falls under her staff. I could see Molly meeting with Chief and or, Nora, but I don't see this as the working group in total getting together outside of these meetings. They are coming, just as Chin is here tonight, representing the OPM, to answer the questions of the public body. and provide input to the public body.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you, Rob. I just wanted a couple of, I personally think the timeline has to be revisited that was sent out to us. But I personally think our priority right now should be the temporary quarters for the fire personnel. And it sounds like that's going to go front and center, correct?
Well, I think the two things are married, right? Because depending on what the recommended long-term solution is, that may have a direct implication on what the short-term solution is as well. And I take that back to when we were talking about the potential option at our listening session in June. We talked about the land behind Starbucks as a possibility. And one of the attractive options with respect to that was the idea that the department would not have to move into temporary ops. They could stay in the existing building while the other is being built, because it's obviously the current building is not being demolished. So I kind of look at it as, there are some dependencies on the short and long-term option, and I don't see anything that has necessarily changed since our June meeting with regard to that, right? I mean, I'm not diminishing continued exposure, but we are not unique in that regard in the Commonwealth. We are trying to build a station with appropriate decontamination space. And I know the building is inspected on a regular basis by an engineer, but the engineer has not deemed the building to be unsafe and we need to get out of there right away. So if that were to change, obviously we would need to react differently to the short-term option. But I think that those two things are still hand in hand. And I think that's the fiscally responsible thing to do, is let's get to the short list of what the options are. And if both options require a temporary solution, then we pick the best temporary solution. And they should be looking at the various temporary options to have a recommendation on that. But I don't think until we know what the narrowed set of two are, which I don't think should take, a long time to get to, but there will be, the scorecards need to be produced and people need to have discussion and debate because we are creating this public body. So it does need to have some time. I just think that there's still two joined pieces to this. The temporary is dependent on what the long-term solution is.
Okay, I agree, they're co-joined, but I'm going to put the temporary quarters ahead of the long-term solution. Let me share a couple of thoughts with you. If we pick 637 High Street, the current location for the fire station, if going over the scorecards, and we haven't yet, but if we decide that that's the ideal location for the temporary quarters, in essence, we're taking 637 High Street off the possible list for a new location. If 637 becomes the chosen site for the temporary quarters, are we going to move the temporary quarters down the road if the committee decides that that's the best location for this fire station and not one of the other locations? I think we have to give that a little more thought. I also want to share.
Can I just respond to that one, and then before you go on to the next one?
Yep.
So I think that sort of puts cart before horse, because if the current 637 High Street was deemed to be the best long-term option, right, in terms of, space, cost, timing, to remove that from consideration because we chose it as the short-term solution would seem like you're disqualifying a site that is the preferred long-term option. And I wouldn't want to do that for the short term. I wouldn't want to sacrifice the long-term solution for the short term.
No, we're on the same page, Rob. We're on the same page. I just want to make the point that I don't want to take that 637 off the scorecard. The second site that's on there is the Deerfield School site. We currently have the Westwood Media Center, the IT department, the rec department there in that school building. The building inspector was pretty clear, and Chin, you were there as well, that putting temp quarters there could significantly change the use of that building, depending upon what percentage of the building the school and what percentage is being used for municipal use. So putting the temp quarters there may trigger the need to bring the entire building up to code, and that's straight from the building inspector. So I just wanted to put that on the table so that folks, as they're going through the scorecard, think about this. If we put one more thing in there, that may tip the scale that we have to bring the entire building up to code.
And I actually think you're getting a little bit ahead of the discussion, only in that you're referencing the scorecard, and we actually haven't even had those things presented to us for the public's benefit yet. So I think those are good, important things for consideration as we're looking at and discussing the scorecards. I just think in terms of sequencing, right? I don't want to decouple them, and I don't want to advance the short term ahead of the long term because they're coupled. If by the time we get to the recommended two options and they both need a temporary location, then by all means, we should be accelerating that. Also, if something were to change, right? If the engineer went in there and said, the floor has now deteriorated to a point where this is no longer a safe place to house the apparatus, then yes, we need to do something. We need to do something right away. So I hear you. I think so are there more comments? Let's just keep to the structure of the committee. I think it sounds like you guys are both okay with that change. Am I hearing that?
Yep. But
Yes.
let me just finish, Rob. So what I'm
Sure, yeah.
saying, what I'm saying is that I'll be perfectly clear. I'm trying to get the temporary quarters up as quickly as possible. We currently have design construction plans for the temp quarters that, as you said earlier, Rob, they have to be updated to putting the temp quarters over at the American Legion. They've all been approved by the Concom, the zoning board, the planning board, and I feel as though we ought to be looking, that should be front and center in our priorities right now. We know what needs to be done. The public knows what needs to be done. The firefighters know what needs to be done. I don't want to delay this by going through a committee. And Rob, if you look at the timeline that you put together, it was 39 days from the night that we're supposed to appoint the people until they're supposed to present before the select. Let me finish. Okay. And then if you go past that, then you're into the holiday season. The next week is Hanukkah. So the point I'm trying to make, Rob, is I think we have to put the temporary quarters front and center and get moving on them ASAP for the health and safety of the firefighters.
Well, let me be clear. I didn't put any timeline together. I just said what I expected in terms of the frequency of meetings, right? There was discussion of timing last meeting, and I think that there may be some things that need to be clarified in that regard, because I really believe that, we're going to need to allow this committee some time to weigh the various options that are before us. Because I think we all agree this needs to be on town-owned land. That's an easy thing to agree on. We all agree that it needs to be inside of the response radius that has been identified, which narrows the set of options, right? And then I believe, all agree that we want our men and women of the fire department to have, in addition to a safe building, what they need to have to provide for our public safety. So the question becomes, on which site and in which configuration can we best deliver that? That's how I view it. And so we need to give this unformed yet committee time to go through that and get educated and ask questions of the chief and ask questions of the architects and the building, commissioner, et cetera. And once they have that narrowed to two, we'll know whether or not one or both require temporary ops. And if they do, we need to know, they need to be parallel pathing which temporary op solution is best. And they can even make a recommendation on, if we need to help accelerate what you're talking about, Joe, if ultimately we need a temporary op solution, this is what we view as the best solution. Right? But I wouldn't want that best solution to take an existing potential site off the table.
No, we're in agreement on that. I just
Yep.
want to reiterate that my goal here is to emphasize how quickly we have to do this. And Rob, as far as the timeline, I'm looking at what came in my packet under the category deliverables and timeline. It was supposed to be a recommend December 8th, PSAC deliberation vote on preferred short-term option. That's 35 days from now. So maybe we had different packets or something, but that's what I was looking at when I studied this. I just can't emphasize enough. I think we've got the information that we need. I think the working group before did a great job on this. I believe it has to go to the temp quad should be set up in the American Legion as soon as possible. That's my 2 cents on this.
I understand, and the stuff in your packet is for our viewing and deliberation on. That was put forward. I didn't necessarily say that I agreed with what the timing assumptions were on that timeline that's in there. So I agree with you that we need to be able to move with expediency in helping resolve the situation. Let's be honest. Had this passed in June, we would have the team already in the temporary quarters at the Legion site, right? So I understand the urgency. I just don't think that we can jump the gun on getting everybody out of the current building unless there is something that necessitates that, right? That's the piece that I'm, holding fast on to say this needs to parallel path with the long-term solution. So, okay. So conceptually, everybody's on board with this change to the structure of the committee. So I'd like us, we're going to probably meet, as I mentioned earlier in the town administrator update, we're going to meet at some point next week to be announcing finalists. I think we can tack onto that particular night's agenda, having each 4 nominees for that committee. I know I have had several conversations to try and get folks for this. Some folks politely declined, others have indicated an interest, but I was surprised at how many folks, actually would rather sit it out. So I don't know if you've had similar experiences, but I want to make sure that we've got a really good cross section of representation, right? Young, old, new residents, lifetime residents, to get a good perspective, so that all those various constituent groups can come together when we get to the polls and support the project, so we can get Chief and the team into the quarters they deserve. Okay.
Agreed.
All right. So next, I think we want to move to the scorecards that Joe was alluding to. Chin, would you like to present the initial thoughts on this? And this is not, I want to be clear, this is for our discussion. And ultimately, these will be the types of things that get filled out and reviewed by this committee once we put this committee to work.
Molly, do you want me to share, or do you
Yes,
have
can
one
you,
that?
can you share your screen?
Yep,
Thank you.
give me a second. Hold on for a second. I pushed the wrong button. You should be able to see my screen.
It's coming up. We can see it. And welcome, Chin. Chin is our owner's project manager from Vertex. He's been involved with this and other projects on our behalf. And as Marianne had stated so eloquently at our last meeting, an OPM is required for projects over a certain size, and this one certainly will meet that requirement. So we asked Chin last time to help us put together a scorecard that could be used for evaluating any site under consideration that would help this new committee also have sort of an equal playing field in how to look at all of these things. So with that, Chin, take us through what you've put together.
I want to preface by saying that this is a
example of a scorecard, and then that meaning that the for a proper scorecard, you will want to review that with the committee to make sure that we understand the issues, and then we have all the options in there, and then therefore, and then we can score them. And then so on the what's in on the screen right now is that these are the sort of what we think is viable today. And then obviously this may not be the case, and then there may be additional options out there that, or that we might find that somewhere along the line that one of these options become not viable. And on the column here, that then you put down the issues or the potential that you want to evaluate against. Obviously, that the total cost to the town will be an important one, and then that if you require purchase or acquiring property, then that require multiple rounds of town meeting for approval, and then that translates to additional time. And then the ownership, and then the response efficiency, whether how or any concern on any one of them, and the lot size adequacy for the program that we are looking at. And so we would help the committee develop a comprehensive criteria list, including timing, in order to do that. And then we insert in there with discussion with the committee that in terms of this is a simple five score. It go from worst, fair, good, better to best, and then you can use that to fill them in, and then that will give you a very good first look at the what option works better. And then we may even consider putting additional weight on something, and then so we can talk about that. And then the same thing can be developed for the short-term solution in terms of where and how, and then what are the potential issues that might be impacted by this, and then using the similar system. So once the committee is formed, then we would sit down with the committee to go over in terms of what are the options, and then what are the criteria that need to be on there.
So Chen, thank you for this and I view this truly as a thought starter, right? So I think, conceptually, I like where you're going. What I'd like to be able to see is things grouped together in categories in addition to the individual criteria, right? So you might have a grouping of things that are operational efficiency, right? Which would include, the proximity to high call volume areas, the access to, major routes, the travel time modeling that was done in the operational model or the operational study. You probably would have a category for the site adequacy in terms of the lot size and the space for bays and living quarters and decontamination area. So like that would all be, a category unto itself. Then you would obviously have, a financial category that would have multiple things. You mentioned land acquisition costs, right? You have site development costs. One may have different long-term operating costs associated with it. I'd like to see a category with respect to time, right? Because things like property acquisition can add time. So I think that's something. And then there may be other categories that Mary Ann, Joe, you guys are thinking about. But I would also, we could also have a catch-all for other, which could be, environmental factors or future expansion potential or whatever it may be. But I'm just, as I looked at what you had put together, Chen, I think it's a great start. I think we need a little more organization to it. And with respect to your concept of weighting different criteria, I think that would be something that we would want the experts as well as the committee itself to weigh in on, because not all criteria are created equal, at least not in my mind. So That's my reaction to what I, saw and what was in our packet. Joe, Mary Ann, thoughts?
Yeah, thank you, Rob. And thank you, Chin, for putting together this draft. As I understand it, what you've presented is a starting point, which will be added to by the advisory group. I think that being able to tease out in terms of programmatic need, what is required by, be it the fire code, the building code, the fire standards that are in effect. I think all of that will be really important as well for people to see what is absolutely necessary. When we think about, X number of people working in this building, what must we have in terms of bathrooms, in terms of showers, in terms of beds, in terms of decontamination? What must we have as the minimum, so that all of that can be very clearly laid out and discussed, so that we understand those programmatic needs and how that translates into what needs to be in the building. And everybody has a very clear way of understanding that. So thank you.
Mary Ann, may I ask a point of clarification when you're talking about reviewing those programmatic needs as we talked about at our last meeting? You're not envisioning all of those things being inside of the scorecard, but that is a separate and apart discussion as to what goes into maybe that operational efficiency category or operational requirements category, right?
Right. So when I saw the operational efficiency category, that's big, right? And there's so much that goes into that. The chief can say better than me. It's everything that they do, apparatus and how our people work and sleep and eat and all of the things they need to do. And there are certain requirements. So I think that's a big category. And I'm sure you'll get into a lot of granularity about that.
There will be a lot of nuance to this, and then we will have to work with everybody to go through that and come to an agreement on what are the criteria that will go on that list.
Great, thank you.
Joe.
The only thing that jumps out at me, Rob, is I agree with everything you guys said. Molly and I were chatting this afternoon, and one thought we had was, Chen, there should probably be a column for which permits or boards does the proposal need to go before, which Rob ties into what you were talking about, the timeline.
There will be detailed of timelines that there might even be subcategory that we will. So those are in the back of my head. Yes.
What I meant is the Deerfield already has gone before boards. The others would have to go before the boards.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, no, Deerfield likely because it would be a change of use.
I'm sorry, American Legion. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
I misspoke.
No. Okay. So I think we are in agreement on the organization of the committee, and we're going to bring forward some names by next week. Try to have 4 each, and so that we can get to, 7, a group of 7. That is a good cross section of the community. It sounds like we've given some good feedback to Chin with respect to things we'd like to see included and added to the scorecard. And then obviously we would have the committee, once it's formed, also take a look at that and add to that so that we're really clear on what the scorecard will look like for both long and short-term options.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we've made some excellent progress here tonight. And Chief, I know you've been listening very closely, and I don't want to play poker with you because you haven't changed your expression the entire time. Any thoughts, concerns as you're listening to this?
One concern, you said you're having trouble getting people to sign up. This isn't a small commitment. Molly and I went to over 70 meetings, 70, for the last one. So timeline is a big concern of mine. What's people's availability going to be? Are they going to be able to meet multiple times a week? Are they going to want to meet? So that's my concern is timeline. And, you're talking about getting down into granular details. That's what eats up all the time. So
Mhm.
that's my concern. But
No,
as
it's-
far as having the citizen board, I'm all on board with that.
Yep. And I think each of us has been pretty clear with folks what the expectations are and the commitment is. And, we owe it to you and your team to get a really thoughtful group that represents a diverse set of opinions so that we can address concerns and people can be feeling really confident that if this diverse group comes forward with a recommendation that they're willing to endorse, that this should be something that the broader community can endorse as well. So, it, I hear you with respect to concerns on time. And at the end of the day, our collective goal is to ensure that we get you all a building that serves you today and well into the future.
Understood.
Okay. All right. That takes us through scheduled action. There is no new business tonight. So we now move to liaison reports. Joe, Marianne, anything to report from any of your committees that you're liaison to?
Not from my end, Rob.
I will report that the Human Rights Task Force recently met, and we discussed a number of ongoing projects in the Human Services Department. The task force is very much looking forward to meeting our new town administrator, and hopefully sitting down with that person. Once they are on board. We've established a direct line with the police department in town. In the event there is an event, which hopefully will be very, very few and far between. But if there is an event which does implicate human rights issues, that the task force will be made aware of that, so that we can discuss it and discuss whatever appropriate action should be taken. So the work continues to be very productive.
Excellent. Thank you for that. I know that with respect to long-range financial planning, we're trying to get some meeting dates on the calendar for that group as we begin the very important work of looking at and discussing the facility studies and the implications for, a long look into the future with needs of the town. So that's the update that I have on that, and stay tuned for more when we get that on the calendar. Next up, we have just approval of meeting minutes. We have regular meeting minutes from our last meeting on October 20th. Did either of you have any comments, concerns, or changes to that document?
As always, Rob, they were superb.
I do not have any changes. Thank you.
Then I would entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion. We accept the regular meeting minutes of October 20th, 2025 as submitted.
Second.
All right, roll call, Joe.
Aye.
Marianne.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. All right. Our next meeting is currently scheduled for Monday, November 17th at 6 p.m. That will be the meeting where Stephanie and Cheryl Hanley and the Board of Assessors bring to us, the tax classification information. Joe, I know that is the day of your next surgery. We will miss you. We wish you well for a speedy recovery on that. We will likely be meeting at some point next week with respect to the town administrator search stay tuned for those dates as we finalize them. I can't reveal those yet because we have not put those in stone yet. So that is our meeting for this evening, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And seconded.
All right, roll call, Joe,
Aye.
Mary Ann,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night. Nice
Thanks,
job, Rob.
everyone.